concept of Jewish-Christian civilization refers to a shared religious, cultural, and moral heritage that has profoundly influenced the development of Western societies. It is not a term denoting a political alliance or a singular religious entity, but rather a civilizational synthesis emerging from the convergence of Judaic and Christian values, traditions, and narratives. This synthesis has informed key aspects of law, ethics, human rights, education, and governance, particularly in Europe and North America. To understand Jewish-Christian civilization, it is essential to trace the historical and theological roots of both traditions, explore their interactions, and examine how their fusion contributed to the shaping of the Western world. 1. The roots of the tradition, Judaism and Christianity. Judaism, the oldest of the Abrahamic religions, is the foundational pillar of Jewish-Christian civilization. It centers on the belief in one God, the covenant with the Israelites, the Hebrew Bible, Tanakh, and the prophetic tradition. Judaism introduced the revolutionary idea of ethical monotheism, a God who is not only the creator, but also the moral lawgiver. Concepts such as justice, human dignity, the sanctity of life, and social responsibility originate from the Hebrew scriptures. Christianity, which emerged in the 1st century CE within a Jewish milieu, built upon Jewish scriptures while introducing new theological interpretations centered around the life, teachings, death, and resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth. Early Christians saw Jesus as the fulfillment of the Jewish messianic prophecies. The New Testament was added to the canon, and key Christian doctrines such as the Trinity, incarnation, and salvation through faith in Christ were developed. While Christianity diverged theologically from Judaism, especially in its Christological focus and on universalization beyond Jewish law, it retained core ethical principles, narratives, and symbols of the Hebrew Bible. The Ten Commandments, the stories of Genesis, and the prophetic calls for justice became central to Christian teaching as well. 2. Tension and dialogue in history. Despite their shared origins, the relationship between Jews and Christians has historically been fraught with conflict, misunderstanding, and persecution, especially in medieval and early modern Europe. Christianity, after becoming the dominant religion of the Roman Empire in the 4th century, often defined itself in contrast to Judaism. Anti-Judaism and later anti-Semitism marred centuries of Jewish-Christian relations, culminating in tragic events like pogroms, forced conversions, and eventually the horrors of the Holocaust in the 20th century. However, even amid conflict, cultural exchanges persisted. Jewish thought influenced Christian scholasticism, and Christians preserved and transmitted Jewish scriptures. Jewish communities in Christian lands, though often marginalized, contributed significantly to science, philosophy, medicine, and commerce, enriching broader societies. In the 20th century, especially after World War II and the Holocaust, a new era of interfaith dialogue began. Landmark declarations like Nostra Aetate, 1965, from the Second Vatican Council marked a turning point, recognizing the shared spiritual heritage and denouncing anti-Semitism. This reconciliation laid the groundwork for the modern articulation of Jewish-Christian civilization as a cohesive cultural and ethical legacy. 3. Shared moral and philosophical foundations. At the heart of Jewish-Christian civilization is a shared set of moral and philosophical values, many of which underpin Western legal and political systems. Among them, the sanctity of human life, rooted in the biblical idea that humans are made in the image of God. Imago Dei. Moral law and conscience, the idea that human beings are morally accountable and guided by an inner conscience. Justice and charity, obligations to help the poor, care for the vulnerable, and pursue justice. Freedom and dignity, the notion of liberty derived from the Exodus narrative as a divine aspiration for all people. The linear view of history as purposeful, moving toward redemption or fulfillment, rather than cyclical as in many ancient cultures. These ideas form the bedrock of Western humanism, influencing Enlightenment thought, democratic ideals, and the development of universal human rights. Jewish-Christian civilization has left a deep imprint on key Western institutions. Law. The concept of a law above kings, the idea of a covenant, and the influence of the Ten Commandments are embedded in Western legal codes. Education. Both traditions emphasize study and textual engagement. The rise of universities in medieval Christian Europe was influenced by monastic and rabbinic models of learning. Social ethics. Institutions such as hospitals, orphanages, and charitable organizations stem from Jewish and Christian concern for the poor and sick. Politics. Many Enlightenment thinkers, even secular ones, drew from biblical sources to defend freedom, equality, and justice. The American Declaration of Independence and the abolitionist movement both relied on Judeo-Christian ethics. 5. Civil religion and the modern West. In modern secular societies, the term Judeo-Christian often functions as a form of civil religion, a set of broadly shared values derived from religious traditions, but adapted for a pluralistic and often secular context. Politicians and philosophers in the United States, for instance, frequently invoke Judeo-Christian heritage to describe the nation's moral underpinnings, especially when affirming values like liberty, tolerance, or the rule of law. While this usage can be inclusive, critics argue that it risks oversimplifying or excluding other traditions, especially Islam, which also shares Abrahamic roots. Still, the civilizational core of the Jewish-Christian heritage remains a crucial cultural reference point in Western identity. 6. Contributions of Jewish-Christian civilization to global ethics. Beyond the West, the influence of Jewish-Christian values has extended through colonial expansion, globalization, and international institutions. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, while secular in language, was shaped by many thinkers who were influenced by Christian and Jewish ethical traditions. Philosophers like Emmanuel Levinas, a Jewish thinker deeply affected by the Holocaust, emphasized ethics as the foundation of human existence, echoing prophetic Jewish calls for justice. Likewise, Christian liberation theology in Latin America fused gospel teachings with radical calls for social justice. Together, these perspectives show that Jewish-Christian civilization is not only a matter of the past, but a living moral tradition capable of engaging with contemporary global challenges like inequality, climate change, and human rights abuses. Charge 7. Criticism and evolving understanding. Despite its influence, the concept of Jewish-Christian civilization has its critics. Some argue that the term romanticized the relationship between Jews and Christians, ignoring centuries of Christian persecution of Jews. Others suggest it has been used politically to exclude Muslims and secular ideologies from Western identity. However, newer scholarship promotes a more nuanced understanding. It emphasizes interdependence and mutual shaping, rather than simple assimilation or hierarchy. Jewish-Christian civilization, in this light, is an evolving dialogue rather than a static inheritance. Conclusion: a legacy of faith, ethics, and responsibility. Jewish-Christian civilization represents a profound and complex legacy, one rooted in shared scriptures, moral principles, and historical experiences. It has contributed to the ethical frameworks, legal systems, and cultural values that define much of the Western world today. More than just a theological lineage, it is a civilizational ethos, emphasizing human dignity, the rule of law, and the moral imperative to care for others. While acknowledging its tensions and historical wounds, recognizing the Jewish-Christian foundation of the West allows for a deeper appreciation of the values that continue to shape modern democracies, inspire human rights, and call individuals and societies to ethical responsibility. As the world becomes more pluralistic and interconnected, the Jewish-Christian heritage remains a vital source of moral insight, an ancient wellspring still flowing with meaning for the present and future of humanity.